At 7:53 a.m., the city of Chicago was just waking up, but inside a quiet corner cafe on Monroe Street, one man's world was ending. Daniel Rivers sat alone in the booth by the window, sleeves rolled, eyes fixed on the stack of papers that would erase 28 years of his life's work. One signature. That's all it would take to turn Rivers' construction from an empire into a memory. The pen trembled in his hand. His lawyer would arrive at 8. 7 minutes left to stop fighting. The waitress noticed first. A young woman in a faded brown apron, pouring refills for strangers who still had something to hope for. Her name tag said Rachel. When she saw the heading on his document, her hand froze mid-pour. "Sir," she said quietly, stepping closer. "If you sign that, you're signing the wrong numbers." Daniel didn't even look up. "You think you know more than my lawyers." "I think," she replied, her voice steady now, "someone made you believe there's no way out." For the first time that morning, Daniel lifted his eyes and saw that she wasn't guessing. She was right. What happens next will make you believe in second chances, and in the people who refuse to stay silent. You're watching Canada's Heartfelt Tales. Hit subscribe now because this story only gets more powerful from here. Rachel's words hung in the air like static, soft, uncertain, but impossible to ignore. For a long moment, Daniel didn't move. He just stared at the woman who dared to interrupt his collapse. Around them, cups clinked, milk steamed. Someone laughed at a distant table. The ordinary morning went on, unaware that a man's entire future had just been paused by a stranger's voice. She stood there, coffee pot in one hand, nerves in the other. "Please," Rachel said, her tone low but firm. "Just let me look for a second." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're asking." "I do," she replied. "You're about to sign something you can't take back." That hit him somewhere deep. Maybe it was the way she said it. Not pitying, not desperate, just honest. The kind of honesty that used to live inside him before exhaustion buried it. He sighed, slid the papers across the table. 2 minutes. Rachel sat down, pulling the stack closer. The light from the window caught the faint tremor in her fingers. Then, as her eyes began to move over the columns, the tremor stopped. Daniel watched as her expression shifted from hesitant to focused. Her lips moved slightly, counting, comparing, calculating. It was a rhythm she hadn't forgotten. 5 minutes later, she looked up. "This isn't right." Daniel leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "They double-counted your warehouse loan," she said, tapping the page. "It's listed as both a property debt and an operating liability. That's the same $2.8 million counted twice." He frowned, scanning the document. "No, that can't be." Then he saw it. The same address, 2 separate entries. How did everyone miss this? Rachel didn't answer. Her focus had already shifted, flipping through more pages. "Your revenue projections are wrong too. They used last year's numbers. But didn't you win a new contract recently?" Daniel blinked. "The Evanston College build. $15 million. Then your total revenue should be 35, not 20. That changes everything about your solvency." Her words came faster now, her confidence building with each discovery. "This loan is already paid off. This equipment's fully depreciated. And this section right here," she tapped the margin with a pen. "It's missing your subsidiary filings. Whoever prepared this didn't consolidate your financials." Daniel felt his chest tighten, not from panic, but from something he hadn't felt in months, hope. "You're saying I'm not bankrupt?" Rachel looked up. "I'm saying you might still have a company." Clock hit 8. Cafe door opened. Daniel's lawyer walked in, briefcase in hand, expression heavy with inevitability. And behind him, Jennifer, his wife, or ex-wife, depending on which day he was counting from. She stood in black, her eyes cold and final. "Daniel," his lawyer said. "It's time." Rachel froze. The authority in that voice made her small again. She began gathering the papers, ready to vanish back into her world of lattes and polite smiles. But Daniel stopped her. No, he said, standing for the first time. His voice cut through the cafe's morning murmur. It's not time. Not yet. Jennifer's arms crossed. Oh, for God's sake, Daniel. Just sign the papers. He turned to her. There are errors. She laughed, bitter and sharp. Now you're taking legal advice from a waitress. From someone who actually read the numbers. He shot back. The lawyer frowned. Daniel, we've reviewed. Then review again. He pointed at the stack Rachel had marked. Double-counted debts. Wrong projections. Dated data. I'm not signing until it's verified. A hush fell over the cafe. Rachel's heart pounded. For the first time in years, someone was standing up for her words. Jennifer scoffed, grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. When this fails, and it will, don't call me. She left to the sound of a small bell that chimed like mockery. The lawyer hesitated, then gathered the documents. I'll have them rechecked, he said quietly. And just like that the room emptied. Only Daniel and Rachel remained. He exhaled, his entire body trembling, not from fear, but from relief. You just saved me, he said. Rachel shook her head. Don't thank me yet. I could be wrong. You're not, Daniel said softly. I can tell. By noon, the cafe's back office had turned into a makeshift war room. Files spread across the desk, laptops open, coffee cups replaced by contracts. Rachel sat beside Daniel, surrounded by professionals who once dismissed people like her. Walk us through it, said Catherine, an auditor with sharp eyes. Rachel did. Calmly, precisely. Her voice no longer wavered. Every error she exposed hit the room like thunder. By the time she finished, Catherine closed her laptop with a snap. If Mr. Rivers had signed this morning, she said, he would have declared bankruptcy for a company that was still solvent. This is professional negligence. Daniel looked at his lawyer, who seemed to shrink in his chair. You're saying, I'm saying you could sue your own legal team for malpractice, Catherine interrupted. And you'd win. Daniel nodded slowly. His lawyer, Robert, took a long breath. She's right. I trusted the wrong associates. I'll make this right, Daniel. Rachel stayed silent. She didn't want credit. She'd spent too long in worlds where taking credit got you crushed. But Daniel noticed. When the others left, he turned to her. Where did you learn all that? Keller Financial Group, she said quietly. I was an analyst. Until my boss framed me for a fraud he committed. Daniel's face darkened. He got away with it. He did, she said. I didn't. There was a long silence. Daniel finally spoke. Come work for me. Rachel blinked. You don't mean that. I do, he said. I need someone who catches what others miss. She laughed once, bitterly. I make coffee now. That's all I do. That's not all I saw today, he said. You didn't just find errors. You gave me my fight back. That afternoon the coffee shop felt different. The light through the windows seemed sharper, like the city itself was paying attention. Rachel's manager, Betty, peeked into the office, eyes wide. Rachel, you in trouble? Not today, Daniel said. Today she's saving 300 jobs. Betty smiled. About time someone saw what that girl can do. For the next few days, Rachel worked beside Daniel's auditors, rebuilding the truth piece by piece. The deeper they dug, the worse the picture became. Not for Daniel, but for those who'd tried to ruin him. His former CFO, Thomas, had left errors that conveniently benefited a rival company. Payments rerouted. Appraisals manipulated. When confronted, Thomas denied everything, until Rachel found the paper trail. Emails, backdated invoices, a transfer to an offshore account. When Daniel confronted him in person, it wasn't in a boardroom. It was in the same cafe where the whole thing began. Thomas arrived smug, still wearing the arrogance of a man who thought he'd won. You shouldn't have called me here, Thomas said, sitting down across from Daniel. Whatever you think you found. Daniel slid the printed emails across the table. You mean these? Thomas's smile faltered. Those are proof, Rachel said from behind the counter, her voice clear and calm. Proof you buried his company to line your pockets. Thomas turned, startled. You again. Me again, she said. The barista who can read. Daniel's tone turned steel. I trusted you for 10 years. You used that trust to destroy everything. So now I'm pressing charges. Thomas stood abruptly, voice rising. You can't prove intent. Rachel stepped forward, holding a printed statement. Actually, she said, we can. You authorized a double entry on the same property loan 3 months after resigning. That's fraud. The auditors already have it. Silence. Cafe customers stared. Thomas's face drained of its color. You're making a mistake, he hissed. Daniel leaned in, voice low. I almost did. But someone stopped me. Now I'm stopping you. Police arrived before the coffee went cold. Weeks passed. The city moved on, but inside Rivers Construction, something new was being built. Something cleaner, stronger. Rachel sat at her new desk, the plaque still smelling of fresh varnish. She was back where she belonged. Numbers, balance sheets, contracts, but this time she wasn't invisible. Daniel stopped by her office. How's the first week? She smiled. Terrifying. And perfect. He laughed. That's how I felt when I started the company. Means you're doing it right. He hesitated, then said quietly, You know, Jennifer called. She wanted to meet. Rachel looked up. Are you going to? No, he said. For the first time, I don't need her approval to know I'm doing the right thing. Rachel nodded, then added, You deserved better. So did you, he said. And now you're getting it. Months later, on a rainy Friday, the cafe held a small ceremony. Betty had invited everyone. Customers, employees, even the delivery guy who'd seen it all unfold. Daniel stood at the counter, holding a silver plaque engraved with simple words. For seeing what others missed. He handed it to Rachel. You saved my company, he said. But more than that, you reminded me why I built it. Rachel's hands shook as she took it. You gave me a second chance. He smiled. You earned it. The crowd clapped. The espresso machine hissed like applause. Outside, a man in handcuffs was being escorted into a police car. Thomas, the ex-CFO. His smirk finally gone. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. Mr. Chin. Any comment on the charges? Daniel watched through the window, silent for a moment. Then he turned back to Rachel. Justice tastes better than coffee. She laughed softly. Depends on who's brewing it. The cafe filled with laughter and the smell of roasted beans. For the first time in years, Rachel's smile wasn't polite. It was real. When the day ended, the lights dimmed and the city hummed outside. Rachel locked up the cafe one last time. Her nameplate gleamed in her bag, the words financial consultant, Rivers Construction catching the streetlight. She turned the key, looked back once at the place where everything changed and whispered, Thank you. Daniel waited at the curb, umbrella in hand. Ready for Monday. Ready for anything, she said. As they walked down the street, the rain softened, the city lights blurred, and the camera lingered on the empty booth by the window, the place where one man nearly ended his story, and one woman began hers. Because sometimes, salvation doesn't arrive in grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it wears an apron, carries a coffee pot, and refuses to stay silent. And somewhere in Chicago, justice finally balanced the books. Coming up next on Canada's Heartfelt Tales, when kindness meets courage, lives change forever. Subscribe now because the next story might just restore your faith in people. When spring came to Chicago, the city smelled like rain and second chances. Daniel stood outside the new headquarters of Rivers Construction, glass gleaming, cranes humming, life moving forward. Beside him, Rachel adjusted her ID badge, now shining with her own name and title. She didn't look like a woman who once poured coffee. She looked like someone who had rebuilt something inside herself. Daniel smiled. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one with all the power. It's the one who still believes in the truth. Rachel nodded. And the truth always finds its way home. They didn't need to say more. The camera lingered as they walked toward the building, sunlight catching on the plaque that read, "Integrity builds everything." Because in the end, what saved them wasn't luck. It was courage, honesty, and the simple act of speaking up. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales, where every story reminds us that goodness still wins.